So I was not hearing in that list of attributes a God who could care if anyone masturbated. I was not hearing a God who...
Depends on what else is stopping you from doing, Sam.
Sorry, I missed that.
I said it depends on what else it's stopping you from doing.
Well, okay, so it's
yeah,
important to live.
But seriously.
It's important to do something other than masturbate.
Yes. Yes, which actually constitutes a problem for many people.
Which is harder than it sounds.
Yeah.
I'm not hearing a God, a personal God who can possibly hear anyone's prayers, much less answer them, right? And so I'm wondering what percentage of religious people who would say, oh yeah, I believe in God and it's the most important thing in my life, what percentage of those religious people do you think have in mind a God of the sort you just described?
I don't know, Sam. It's a good question, because when I go talk to people, when I talk to people online and use exactly this terminology, millions of people listen. So it's not so obvious what percentage of people see it this way. It may be that they have the intuitions, but they haven't been articulated well.
I mean, this is the problem. This is what worries me about this. So, I mean, you could do the same thing with the idea of ghosts, right? So people traditionally have believed in ghosts. It's an archetype, you might say, the ghost. Survival of death is certainly an archetype. And we know what most people most of the time mean when they say they believe in ghosts. And I say, I don't believe in ghosts. And you say, no, you do believe in ghosts. Ghosts are your relationship to the unseen. That's a ghost. So you have a new definition of ghost that you're putting in the place provided, which I have to say, well, of course I have a relationship to the unseen, so yeah, I guess I do believe in ghosts. You know, you win that argument. But that simply isn't what most people mean by a ghost. Most people
but you
mean...
can't use that simplified argument about my conception of ghosts as an analogy for the propositions that I just put forward.
This is what I see you do. I mean, maybe you have more to say on the topic of God, but this is what I hear you doing with God. You have defined the God that most people believe in, and we know this is the God that most people believe in.
I was asked what God I believed in.
Yes, no, but I'm asking you what percentage. Yes, but you by shifting the definition, you have robbed the noun, the traditional noun, of its traditional meaning, and you're imparting to people a sense.
Wait a second.
I'm not so sure.
What do you mean by traditional meaning? Look, it's one of the elemental claims in the Old Testament is that you're not even supposed to utter the name of God, because by defining it too tightly, you lose its essence. And so let's not be talking about what the classical definition of God is here, okay? It's a historical non-starter. Okay, and there's plenty of religions that make it...
Can I check in with the audience? Is the audience all right with us continuing down this road?
Okay.
So, can I jump in here?
You're sacrificing your Q&A.
So, yeah, that it is at the expense of Q&A. That's what you're giving up. But I think it's probably worth it. So, let me say, Sam, I do not believe in a supernatural God. But the God that I heard Jordan just describe, I do not have any difficulty understanding why he might care if you masturbate. And I also don't have any trouble figuring out how he might answer prayers.
Well, tell me more then.
Well, I can tell you how a prayer might be answered.
Okay, but these are
it's specific, so you could let me do that.
It'll be interesting. So I'm not Jordan. We've not talked about this. If I heard an answer from him that actually would satisfy me as to what the mechanism of action might be, that'd be pretty interesting. And if he can tell me what I heard, I think it would suggest that we're not just making up stories here.
Okay, so you might like this, you maybe not, but it's possible. Okay, so imagine that. Okay, so let's imagine that hellish situation that you laid out. Okay, but let's put the extra twist in it, because one of the things that we both decided, I think, was that you also have to build in the intent into that. So let's say the hell that we're talking about isn't the victim of the terrible massacres that you laid out in the jungle story, but a perpetrator. Okay, so someone who's actually acted in a malevolent manner, truly malevolent manner. Okay, or maybe perhaps we wouldn't have to take that extreme case. We could say, well, perhaps you've decided that, any of you, you've decided that you've seriously done something wrong. Okay, and that you want to get away from hell, you want to make things better. Okay, so here's an exercise you can try. So what you do is you sit on the edge of your bed and you say, okay, what I did was wrong. And you have to really believe this, right? So you've thought about it, it's killing you. It's killing you. So now you're penitent and you're confessing, let's say. And you're confessing to yourself as much as to anyone. And you say, I really want to know what I did wrong. And I really want to know what I could do to put it right. And I'm willing to accept any answer that will manifest itself to me. You try that. See what happens.
Well,
that's a prayer that will be answered, and it won't be answered in the way that you want it to be answered. I can bloody well tell you that.
Okay, but that...
Well, what are you communicating with when you do that?
No, that is something that is a process that I'm familiar with. It doesn't require any supernatural explanation, and it certainly doesn't require that we imagine that any of our books were dictated by the creator of the universe.
I didn't say that it required any supernatural explanation or that it required the book. I was asked to provide an instance of prayer that worked, and that's what I did. I didn't do anything other than that.
That's fully understandable in terms of human psychology. And
it's not understandable because we don't know where the answer comes from.
Well, we don't know where anything comes from.
That's true.
Yeah. Okay. So yeah, but that doesn't open the door. I mean, one thing we can know with absolute certainty is that whoever wrote the Bible didn't know either, and there's many other things he or she didn't know, like everything else we know scientifically, right?
It's not so obvious what people know and what they don't know.
No one even knew the brain was involved in any of this. Right. So
yeah, but they probably knew about as much as we do about how the brain was involved in it.
But we've already established in some tenuous way that things that nobody understands could have evolved into these stories in some way that would be useful, but nobody knew what they were writing when they wrote it. Right.
The problem is that you can. So again, this has been focused through the lens of your attachment to Christianity largely, but Hinduism is a completely different set of stories, right? And many of them, the logic, the emotional logic, the psychological import, many of them have the opposite valence from any Christian story you would tell. The whole notion of, like for instance, the whole notion of good and evil, right, which has such primacy. I mean, you talk about religion being deeper than ethics because ethics just deals with right and wrong, and religion deals with good and evil, right? Bedrock, okay? Good and evil do not have the same meaning in the East. Buddhism and Hinduism do something very different with good and evil.
I'm willing to accept your definitions of good and evil for the current argument.
The truth is, there's just not even, evil is just ignorance on some level. It's just, evil is just
You haven't met any real evil people if you believe that.
Well, okay, so then all the Hindus and Buddhists are wrong about this. That's a possible claim. I'm just saying that there's over 1 billion people who have a religious system of stories from which they derive all kinds of meaning, to which they're mightily attached, to where we could play the same game of archetypal interpretation and valuing, and yet the cash value with respect to good and evil is irreconcilable with what you get from Christianity.
Look,